This one is Punta Mita, another nice living room. I'll show you.
Wow,
Looking out.
Gorgeous.
You should have been quarantined there.
Can't wait.
Exactly.
This is the new way everybody's going to show their work.
That's right. Exactly.
Amazing living room.
I find that the Hawaii, I like the jungly green. It's a good backdrop.
Great.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. I imagine people are going to be joining us throughout the session, but let's go ahead and start. Okay. So first things first, I wanted to thank all of you, to start by thanking all of you. The ultimate luxury is time. So I appreciate all of you taking the time out to join this morning and to be present with us. It's just 45 minutes, but I really encourage the use of this time as an opportunity to inspire and help you just reimagine the possibilities. All right, so just a quick kind of lay of the land of what we're going to be doing today. So you may have noticed that we decided for this insight session with everything going on to kind of forego a little bit of the webinar only format. So a lot of conversations leading up to this event and a lot of the feedback that I was hearing from my team was that people were really excited to dive into the topic, but there was just a lot of conversation also about people just being very excited to just have the opportunity to connect with other people. So what we're actually going to be doing is, so right now everyone is muted and you'll remain muted for the rest of the presentation part. So we'll do kind of a trend presentation first. And then what we're going to do is we're going to close that a little bit early so that we can kind of jump in and just connect with each other. We can use today's theme kind of as a guide for the conversation, but just make sure afterwards to unmute yourself when you're going to share. And obviously, if you're comfortable with your camera, we'd obviously love to see your face, as we're all connecting today. So just a quick introduction on me before we jump in. So my name is Leyda Hernandez. Some of you know me, some of you do not know me, but I'm the founder and CEO of C'EST Du Luxe, and we're a luxury lifestyle focused trend forecasting and marketing firm based in New York. So we have two sides of the company, one that focuses on trend forecasting, one that focuses on marketing. So we were really born out of the belief that we create tomorrow today. So we really believe that art and science is foundational to driving that narrative forward and just pushing the boundaries of insights and the possibilities around marketing, and specifically in the luxury space. So we have one side of the company that really focuses on trend forecasting, on research, data, sharing our insights, these kinds of sessions included. And then we have another side of the company that really focuses on the application of those insights. So marketing, working collaboratively with clients to really develop a powerful narrative, create digital destinations, websites, e-commerce, so on. So it's really kind of taking, there's so much information to really kind of taking a tailored approach to how we apply these insights to each individual business. So I wanted to just highlight who's in the room. So we have just such an incredible and supportive community of professionals, thought leaders, business owners, experts in their own right from all over the world that are joining us today. So we have people that are joining us from Italy, from New York, from Miami, from Mexico, and from so many different disciplines, from concierge to fashion, to retail, to interior design, skincare, and so on. So because we have such a great group that's coming together today, we're all really coming together to learn and kind of meaningfully connect. So after the trend presentation, I really want to open up the dialogue to include all of you. So kind of what we're going to start with. So the theme today was really focusing on cultural, generational influences that are impacting the luxury industry, and highlighting how international luxury brands are innovating in the area, and what does it really mean to build a legacy in today's landscape. So I think where we need to start is, if we're thinking about the future of luxury, there's no way to do that without thinking of who the future luxury consumer is going to be. And so we're really going to be talking, there's lots of generations that play a role in the luxury space today, but we're really going to be focusing on the two largest generations, which are baby boomers and millennials. And we're really going to talk about kind of what was going on before this crisis happened and how this crisis has kind of shifted the relationship of how we should treat these as individual separate markets. So first things first, I wanted us to kind of just reimagine shopping. And so these are stats from before this crisis happened. And so I think it's interesting to just kind of, you know, have a frame, some context in our minds of where we were, where, you know, how shopping was already kind of taking place, and where we already saw trend data going. So 60-70% of luxury goods were being digitally influenced. So that means that at some point somebody searched this online, looked for reviews, maybe watched the video, connected with a friend. You know, there was some kind of digital influence versus this person just walking into a store and deciding to buy the product. We were also seeing that digital traffic to store traffic for luxury brands was at a 2-to-1 ratio, where website traffic, you know, was twice as much as store traffic. The last point here is that online sales were projected to account for 25% of the market by 2025. So what I really want to do here is just to reimagine the luxury kind of shopping experience for all of us going into the conversation, and really think about the fact that digital and in-person, whether that was a store, whether that was events, digital and in-person was really kind of, you know, they were both part of this toolkit that we really had to consider. Nobody, you know, there are very few digital only luxury brands. There are very few kind of standalone retail luxury brands. And what we were really seeing was an overlap of using both of these two, and retail affecting digital and digital affecting retail. So we saw that 60-70% of purchases were being influenced in some way by some kind of digital activity. But if you look at the last point here, the projection was that by 5 years from now, online sales would account for 25% of the market, which means that even though, you know, purchases were being digitally influenced at a much higher rate, 75% of those purchases were not actually being made online. People were still going into a store. People are still engaging with a person to do the actual transaction, to kind of end, you know, to kind of finish off that customer journey. So I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind. The fact that we really went into this already as digital kind of being a balance, you know, kind of being an influencer on retail and vice versa, and just seeing that although digital was playing a much higher role, it still wasn't really kind of a key player in closing sales at the end of the cycle. So leading up to this crisis, and I think in many ways, people have really segmented the luxury space into two groups, into baby boomers and millennials. And there's been so much conversation about millennials and just, you know, they're a new customer. So I think there's always a level of excitement about the new kind of generation coming in and how they're going to impact things. But in reality, baby boomers still made up the majority of the market. Like, they were still making up the majority of those transactional purchases of luxury goods and services. So we're looking at two very large generations that approach luxury and how they like to shop in very different ways. And so leading up to this crisis, you could almost identify, you know, what age group customers belong to based on how they purchase things. I think one very good example of that is some of the changes that we were seeing in the fine art space in terms of how people were buying art. And so instead of going to, you know, instead of going to individual galleries and looking at collections, you started to see kind of this rise of art fairs like Art Basel, which were much more kind of like for the millennial art collector who was trying to be very efficient about how they were going about buying art. And so you could almost kind of divide the two. You can almost divide people by what age group they belong to based on how they bought things. Millennials, for example, are far more willing to purchase art online. So there was a survey that Bloomberg did last year that showed that 17% of the people that had been surveyed had spent, of the millennials that had been surveyed, had spent $100,000 or more on an art piece online. So you can just see that just very different behaviors in terms of these two groups. And so, but like I said, don't let kind of all the buzz fool you when it comes to millennials. Baby boomers really were and continue to be the dominant force. However, millennials are reaching their peak earning years. Disposable incomes also see a shift in global wealth dynamics, where you have new members coming into an ultra wealthy club, coming in from Asian countries, China and Japan primarily, who not only have an interest in tech, but who have also made their money in tech. And so you have a huge generation of kind of new luxury consumers that are much more diverse in terms of their cultural, racial makeup. They tend to be more self-made, coming from self-made wealth, more than the other generations. But like I said, you're seeing an interest in, not just an interest in technology in terms of where they're spending their entertainment and investment dollars, but it is also where a lot of them have made their money. So the projection by 2025 was that millennials were going to make up 50% of the global luxury market. And this is a huge stat. And I want to just highlight how much has changed. So this is from the Boston Consulting Group last year. However, if I was giving this presentation in 2017, the projection was that by 2025, millennials were going to be driving 40% of the global luxury market. So that you can see just from 2017 to 2019, this was an increase of 10% in terms of how much market capital they're supposed to be having. But I do want to highlight kind of two important things around the stat. So it says that 50% of consumers will be millennials, which means that 50% of consumers will not be. So this is for the first time, really, where millennials are really, where you're really having to consider them kind of as a majority consumer group. The other thing I want to kind of highlight here is that these numbers show 2025 as kind of the projected date. Obviously, a lot of companies are filing their earnings and things right now. I'm sure we're going to have updated projections of what these numbers are actually going to be reflected now with everything that's happening. But I do want to highlight the fact that this said by 2025. So ideally, before this crisis happened, you had 5 years before you had to think about millennials being a majority group. And in a couple slides, I'm going to highlight how the crisis has really kind of changed that and really sped things up. But also how that relationship in terms of how we should approach these two groups should actually now be very different during the crisis and after the crisis. And although, we've probably some of us have been in quarantine probably for a month or two, but, you have a lot of markets that have been dealing this for several months. And so even though ideally this would be, in a crisis situation, a very quick crisis that we would go through, this is actually going to have long-term effects, where you really would have to change the nature of your business and your business model for probably the next 1.5 years or 2 years. Once the opportunity of going back to normal is actually an option, right? So really there is going to be, you know, kind of lasting effects here. And I'm sure, like I said, a lot of companies are filing their earnings right now. I'm sure in our other insight sessions that we have coming up, we'll have more data to kind of present on how these things have, some of these things have changed. So looking at just some of the early numbers from China. So China has had the opportunity to reopen some of their stores. Hong Kong has been able to do the same thing. And so when you're looking at, you know, whether you're, honestly, there's so much that is in flux right now when it comes to manufacturing, when it comes to retail. There's so much that's kind of in flux right now. But China, I think, is really interesting to kind of look at as an early case study. They have been able to kind of lack some of the social distancing and have been able to open some, you know, some stores again, and have people do, you know, business in a, you know, a little bit more lax, back to normal manner. So if we're looking at the numbers from China, they have really gone through a period where they've had to have this kind of like transition period and balancing game where all of their businesses really, it feels like everybody kind of got hit by like a train. Everybody got into a collective like car crash, and everybody's kind of recovering from that. And the recovery is going to look different for every single company. And so now that we can see some of these things in China and we see the, you know, that they're starting to reopen, we can see some of what they've done, what they did on e-commerce during that time, can use it as a little bit of a case study. So if early numbers from China are to be any indication of what we can expect here, what we're going to see is increases in e-commerce, not just in millennials, but also in baby boomers. So this is why I said we kind of have to think about, we really thought about these as two separate groups that behave very, very differently. But the reality is when it comes to this crisis, what we're seeing in markets that have, you know, that have had a little bit more time than we have had in New York, is that their e-commerce numbers are going up actually across all age groups. So it's no longer kind of like a millennial thing. Baby boomers have also kind of upped their spending on e-commerce. The only group that has actually decreased in terms of e-commerce spending is under 30, or is people under 30. So again, already we're not talking about the millennial group, you know, we're talking about millennials and up. And so we're really starting to see this shift in terms of digital and baby boomers as well. So I think that's one of the main things I want people to take from today's conversation, is that separation of like, well, my customers aren't online, it's a narrative we kind of have to redefine during these times. All right, so thinking about e-commerce, so here in New York, we're about a month and a half into our quarantine, and what we're seeing is just a lot of luxury businesses that have leaned into e-commerce are reporting kind of record numbers comparable to what they typically would see during Black Friday. And so, which is great. Obviously, it's not going to make up for the loss of retail, for that loss of revenue, but I think it is an opportunity for e-commerce to be taken more seriously, and also for people to adopt more of a digital first strategy or mentality during these times. And so just the fact that you have businesses that are really leaning into e-commerce, that they're seeing numbers that are performing kind of comparative to their peak e-commerce periods is, you know, a very good sign of kind of the potential in these shift of dollars from retail or in-person events to more of these online virtual e-commerce interactions. Okay, so going into more of this kind of global perspective, and I'm gonna try to go through this quickly because I do want to make sure that we have time for all of us to connect. So highlighting just how some global brands are innovating in this area and kind of redefining what it means to build a legacy today. We're just going to focus on two today, embracing a digital first strategy and shifting executive competency. So just thinking about who you have in terms of leadership, who you have as in terms of support for your leadership during this time. So many companies have really kind of seen this crisis as a catalyst for developing and executing an online omni-channel strategy, putting digital kind of at the center of your operating model. And it's really an opportunity, and a really kind of tough opportunity, but an opportunity nonetheless to have to ask yourself some really hard questions. So if you had a website, if you had a social media presence before the crisis, and you kind of, and what you did was kind of check things off. So you were kind of like, okay, I have a website, I know I need that, have a Facebook page, that kind of thing. So if the crisis is really kind of making a lot of businesses face the music, and if, you know, if with the crisis is all, if all of your in-person opportunities, events, retail opportunities, with all of those things closing, if that meant that your business also really kind of, that your business also came to a standstill, then that's your proof that your website, your Facebook, your social wasn't driving business for you. And so I think the crisis is really making a lot of people face the music in terms of what they've done online. I mean, it's the same thing with retail or any other strategy or manufacturing strategy. It wouldn't be a checklist. You would really want to be strategic about how you approach it if you wanted to deliver results for your business. So I think it's really about, you know, discovering and laying out these frameworks to drive your business forward. And I want to highlight just a couple of examples. So Versace is a brand that I love from a digital perspective, just because they were one of the earliest luxury brands, period, to embrace digital. So Versace launched their first e-commerce website in 2011, 2012, around that time, which is, like I said, which is not a long time for websites, but it's definitely a long time when you're looking at luxury brands kind of in the digital space. So even though we think, as you know, there's other people in the space, there might be other people that have better websites, or there might be other competitors that have already done this, the reality is that most luxury brands are not very deep into their digital journeys. But Versace, I think, does a very good job at kind of creating content, doing storytelling in a different way, participating in conversations. And this is a time where you really have two options as a company. You can develop your brand and develop revenue, or you can just develop your brand, right? And so I think they've done a very good job at kind of developing their brand, making sure that they're participating in conversations. And you might not have, you know, Versace on the floor every single time that is performed, or that has a major role in culture. It also means that Versace increases in terms of search volume, in terms of website traffic, et cetera, et cetera. So these kinds of collaborations, you might not have a celebrity that you can work with, you know, but there are influencers, there are people that you might consider people of influence that you can kind of, that you might want to think, you know, reimagine and think differently during this time. And then this is a video of Donatella where she's basically going around lip syncing Versace on the floor. So you can kind of see this relationship between the two. Versace has still actually all of their stores, all of their boutiques in the US and Europe are still closed. And so they've started to be able to reopen some things in China and Hong Kong. But what I want to highlight here is, because Versace kind of leaned into digital, what they've actually been able to do is, even though all of their boutiques in the US and Europe are closed, their e-commerce allows them to reach markets that they're not actually able to reach from a retail perspective. So, and like I said, there's so many brands. Versace is, you know, is one of the ones that has been in the game the longest, in the digital game the longest. And really, they haven't, you know, like I said, most luxury brands are actually very new to their digital journeys. And so Versace is a company that kind of, you know, invested in digital coming in, but not every brand was in, you know, was in this position. And there are a lot of brands that are starting new things right now and are experimenting with new things right now. So I do want to highlight some of those. So Delvaux, for example, debuted their first e-commerce website this month with just a collection of small handbags. This is the first time they've ever done e-commerce. We've also seen Bulgari, they launched flagship stores, virtual flagship stores on Alibaba for the first time. So, we're looking, this is an example of Versace, who was, relatively prepared compared to other brands going into this crisis, but we have other brands completely that are not in this position and that are starting new things for the very first time. And so I think this is a very good time to reimagine things, to reinvent yourself, to redefine your brand and how you want to be known in a different way. Live streaming has also become kind of a key priority for a lot of brands, both from a shopping perspective, so live shopping, people buying directly from live streams, as well as just from an engagement perspective. I've also seen a couple of real estate companies, luxury real estate companies. I'll have to think on who the company was, but I also saw a luxury real estate company that was doing a very good job kind of showing listings through IG stories in a really kind of engaging way, the same way that you would as if you were there and getting a tour. So live streaming is, been incredibly useful, and almost every single platform has a variation or several variations of this that you can take advantage of. And luxury brands are really masters of storytelling, masters of legacy, of timelessness. And I think this is a time where this is really putting some of that, really challenging some of that, challenging your legacy, challenging your timelessness. But again, luxury brands are masters of storytelling. It's a matter of just evolving the way that you tell a story. So when it comes to the executive ecosystem, the last 30 years have really been about value creation, creativity, and innovation in the luxury space. What I think is that the next 30 is really going to be about resilience and transformation. So in addition to supporting core competencies, things like design, marketing, and merchandising over this next period, I think it's really important for luxury brands to now need managerial talent that's going to support the CEO, whether that's on your executive team or advising your executive team, that is really kind of supporting the people that are having to make these decisions in a time of resilience, in a time of transformation. And the other thing is just service. Being overly communicative in guiding customers and how they can interact with you during this time, I think is very, very important. How they can interact with you, how they can consume, whether that's product, service, or just content. And really, providing that guidance for customers or potential customers on if they can buy, how they can buy, where, and whether you're open for business. So I'm gonna close that up, and what I wanna do is open, kind of have an open roundtable that includes all of you. Like I said, on the call today, we really have people that span a lot of different disciplines and industries, and are also participating in a lot of different markets. And so some people submitted questions through our Instagram and via email leading up to today's insight session. So I have a couple of questions here. I think we might only have time to go through one, maybe two of these. But what I want to start with, I think, is a very kind of open question for all of us. Whoever wants to jump in, feel free to unmute yourself and you can kind of jump in first. But the first question I want to present to everybody is, where do you see your company in 5 years? And I'd love to hear just the different answers of where everybody's coming from and what they're thinking. And what I want you to do is introduce yourself, give us your name, share a little bit about your company, tell us where you're based, and let us know, what does it look like for you 5 years from now? And whoever wants to jump in first can feel free to do so. Just make sure you've unmuted yourself.
Okay, I would be the first one. And this is Alan Wei. Many people know me. And I'm working for a French wine and spirits company called Remy Cointreau. And personally, I'm responsible for a brand called Louis XIII, which is a ultra high-end cognac brand. For a classic Louis bottle, we are talking about 3,500 US dollars. I'm based here in New York. So this pandemic brings some very interesting opportunities to us because, which you can imagine, all the hotels, restaurants, bars has to be shut down. So we somehow we lost the consumption occasions. But in the meantime, we do see a lot of people stay home and they do want to celebrate, they do want to enjoy the moment spent with their families. So e-commerce becomes the only channel that we can rely on, which in the past, this is not the case because for this $3,500 a bottle, a lot of people prefer to buy off the line. Because of pandemic, they shift to the online. So to answer your question directly, we do see the opportunity, e-commerce, online shopping, live streams, those kind of digital activation will definitely become more and more important. And also, I like very much what you said at the first and the second slide. You're talking about in the future, digital and in-person interaction would be the key for the future luxury activation, which I cannot agree more. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Have you changed what have you changed in respect to e-commerce since this started?
Okay, so actually, internally, we form a task force. We try to help our retailers, offline retailers, to further develop their e-capability. So we consolidated and provided what we call e-brand assets to those trade partners so that they can do their e-job way better than before.
Fabulous, that's great. I think a task force makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Jay, did you want to say something? Does anybody else want to share in terms of next 5 years? It might make it easier just to think about the next year and a half, maybe 2 years.
Hi, yes, I will. My name is Eleonora Paulson, and my company is Gruppo Italia. I started it 20 years ago, and I have a consortium of factories all throughout Italy providing very high-end custom production. So it's sort of the couture of furnishings and millwork and stone for larger scale projects, as well as very special private residences. So we rely on both the interior design community, real estate, as well as construction. So uniquely enough, even before COVID kind of hit, I was starting to pivot and start structuring how to really incorporate tech. Although we're an industry that really is building some of the most incredible things in the world, for the most part, we're kind of tech dumb. Everything is about as dumbed down as can be. So I was already starting to figure out how to incorporate tech and, you know, coming up against some obstacles of this is how we always do things. But now, in a very weird way, thanks to COVID, I think we're all experiencing, just like we are right now, how we can do things. And it's not to replace anything, but I believe it's to incorporate new technologies. So that's really how I see, you know, people still are going to want to touch the wood. They're going to want to touch the leather. Of course, we're going to have to meet and everything else, but it's definitely a matter of bringing the designers things online where it's not just a catalog, that it's e-commerce, it's more interactive. So that's something I was starting and now definitely are moving full speed ahead, because I do believe that that's going to be the future of my business as well. And we're kind of a niche within a large industry, but maybe we can be the ones to start it or at least perfect it.
Yeah. Somebody has to. Somebody will.
Got to, exactly.
Yeah,
My industry is right for a change anyway. I just think you get so, used to doing what you do, and sometimes we're working on a $40 million townhome or $1 billion 1,200 residences project, and you're just going to do what you do because it's easier. So somebody definitely has to, we know we need a change. And now I think this is the impetus to have somebody create it and then have an audience that's a little bit more open to trying something new, because we're all doing everything new right now. So, and it's working to a degree. So that's kind of my thoughts.
Do you feel like it's gonna help you kind of open up to different kinds of customers, like
Definitely.
moving these things online? In what way?
I think it maybe not completely different customers, but I'd say for the last couple of years, I've really just been focused on the larger projects, which is not good. So now using this, it becomes almost intimate in a way that we can do something like this with maybe 2 designers working on a very special project that I wouldn't ordinarily be able to get to. So it's a matter of feeding that interaction through a social media campaign and bringing different designers even across the country into the fold, where I don't have to get on a plane to see a studio head in Chicago. I can do it this way. So it hasn't happened yet, but it's all in the plans.
The way that you work. Yeah, I like that.
All in the plans. Oh, sorry, Casanova.
Yeah,
Like,
rethinking the way that you work, I think, is really important. It's really good. It's going to be interesting to see kind of the effect of working from home for a lot of people that have gotten used to, that were normally working from home, that have really kind of had to digitize their whole workflow.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty, I mean, I think it's going to have impacts throughout, but it's a matter of how you harness it. You either see the cup half empty or half full.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're ripe with opportunity as long as we keep some sort of enthusiasm going and don't get tied up in listening to the news 24/7, because that doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, you have to feel empowered.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So
which is hard to do during these times, but we can. Got a lot of, I noticed the other day I'm doing more of these. There's panel discussions and things within the industry that I'm attending now that I may not have driven into the city, or I may not have cut a meeting short to go to, but now I'm participating in it, and it's just, I think it's wonderful. So
yeah, I love the sense of community, but the same thing. I like the fact that we're able to have people join and connect that normally, aren't based in New York and normally wouldn't be able to attend, or wouldn't now have to fly to attend something like this. So let's see if anybody else wants to add to that, and then we'll close out. So if we just have one more about what the next 1.5, 2 years might look like for you. And if you don't have your camera on and you just want to talk, that's fine too.
So, hi everybody.
Hi.
Hi. My name is Shi, and I am from Milan now. So here is in the afternoon, and I am a business development director of fashion and the luxury industry. So I've been working in this industry since 8 years almost, and actually I'm from mainland China, Shanghai city. So our company is the biggest independent digital marketing agency in China, also listed, named Highlink Digital Solution. So what happened is, I've seen, for example, here in Italy, actually this industry is quite conservative before coronavirus, but I've seen a little bit of movement, especially in the last year. But because there are a lot of family business, although they're all big name brand, but they're not that forward about digitalization. But maybe I should say, thanks to this coronavirus, no matter you want or you don't want, no matter the company, the brand, they accept or they don't accept, this movement push these company to go to the digital transformation. So I remember this Thursday, I did a webinar about digital marketing learning from China. So I've received a lot of emails, a lot of brands. They also ask me, so what's going on in China? Because you know, in China, actually the digitalization is quite speed up.
Yep.
So this is what's happening here in Italy. So maybe this is anyway, it's coronavirus. It's really, really negative impact of the world. But maybe there's something positive sense we can see, especially in the luxury industry. Thank you. Wish you all the best. Thank you for your organization, this webinar.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. And
Yeah,
thank you
so
for-
welcome to Italy also. Let me know if you are here. Okay, Milan.
Of course, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so thank you everybody for sharing your stories, sharing struggles, sharing triumphs. I think what came out of today was just really powerful, empowering energy. So I want to share just some of the stuff that we have coming up. So we have other insight sessions that are coming up, as well as other programming that really kind of came as a result of what's going on. So we have a digital luxury immersive that's more of a workshop. So think of that more as like a boot camp that's happening on May 6th. On May 29th, we're having an insight session that focuses on the digital age and having more of a luxury fashion focus. On June 10th, we're going to be focusing on a search immersive, so very similar boot camp, but focused on SEO. June 26th, we'll have another insight session that focuses on the evolution of home and lifestyle. And on July 8th, we're going to have an immersive that focuses on analytics, on Google Analytics. And so even whether you're in this industry or not, we will, I think a lot of the challenges that everybody's dealing with in terms of digital, in terms of staying at home and how is that going to affect everybody's life, I think are, pervasive topics that are really kind of affecting all of us. So I invite you to join any of these insight sessions. We'll be announcing others too. So feel free to sign up for the newsletter if you're not already on it. But again, thank all of you for joining. I hope to connect with all of you soon. So I'll check in with each one of you via an email and just kind of get your thoughts and your feedback on today. But feel free to reach out to me. You can reach out to our team at hello@c'estdulux.com or follow us on social, anything like that. So we'll wrap up here. I hope to see you guys next time. And thank you everybody for joining. Have a good weekend.
I know.